Welcome to Motivational Humanity. You are not alone. The most dangerous kind of disconnection is the one that slowly starts to feel normal. This video is about the moment you stopped feeling and didn't even notice. There's a quiet moment that most people never notice. It comes not with a bang, but like a shadow slowly stretching across a room. At first it's subtle, a hesitation to speak, a pause before laughter, a sigh that lingers longer than it should. Over time, these moments accumulate, and suddenly you realize you've started to feel less. You don't notice the numbness creeping in because it feels safer than the pain, the discomfort, the raw edges of life. Feeling too much can be exhausting, even unbearable, so your mind convinces you that shutting down is the only way to survive. You start to move through your days mechanically. Smiles appear automatically. Conversations happen on autopilot. Tasks get done, responsibilities checked off, but the weight inside remains. You think, I'm fine, because saying otherwise feels risky. Admitting that something hurts, that something is missing, that the world feels heavy. Admitting this could open you to scrutiny, judgment, or rejection. So you trade your full emotional spectrum for something quieter, something tolerable, something that lets you keep moving without truly feeling. But here's the truth you might not have recognized. Numbness is not peace. It's pain with the volume turned down. It's not an absence of difficulty. It's a postponement of living. In the moments when you allow yourself to pause, when you give yourself permission to notice, you realize what's been lost, not just sadness or grief, but joy, connection, wonder, and even hope. These things don't vanish entirely, but they become distant, like memories of a song you once loved but haven't heard in years. The first step back is awareness. Naming the numbness is powerful because it shines a light in a place that has long gone dark. You don't need to fix it immediately. You don't even need to understand it fully. You only need to notice that it exists. A single honest acknowledgement, I've been feeling disconnected, can open a crack enough for a little light to seep in. Start small. Observe when you say, I'm fine, instead of what you truly feel. Write it down, whisper it to yourself, or speak it to someone you trust. Notice the moments when you feel alive, however fleeting, and honor them. This is not about forcing emotion. It's about remembering how to feel slowly, gently, without shame. In that recognition, in that noticing, you begin to reclaim yourself. You begin to choose feeling again. And in that choice lies the first spark of courage. There is a subtle cost to avoiding vulnerability, a cost that builds slowly, quietly, almost imperceptibly, until it becomes a part of who we think we are. It begins in small, almost harmless ways. A smile that hides exhaustion, a nod that conceals doubt, a laugh that masks fear. At first, these acts feel protective. They feel like shields against the possibility of being seen in all your complexity, in all your uncertainty. But as the days and months pass, the shields become walls. The protective gestures grow into habits. And before you know it, the person staring back at you in the mirror is someone you barely recognize, someone who has learned to survive by hiding, by shutting down, by pretending to be more composed, more whole, more invulnerable than you actually feel. Vulnerability feels dangerous, and it is. It asks you to show parts of yourself that you have spent years convincing yourself and the world are unworthy of exposure. It asks you to speak your truth, even when it trembles. It asks you to let your heart be seen fully in all its fragility. And the truth is, vulnerability carries risk. It carries the risk of rejection, the risk of misunderstanding, the risk of disappointment. But avoiding it altogether carries a far greater cost. The slow erosion of your own aliveness, the inner struggle that fuels this. Avoidance is relentless and complex. It is the voice in your head that whispers, if I open up, they will see the cracks. If they see the cracks, they might judge me. If they judge me, I will be rejected. This voice grows louder in moments of fatigue, stress, or uncertainty. It is strongest when you are alone with your thoughts, because in those moments there is no distraction, no one else to deflect the weight. It tells you that hiding is safer, that numbness is preferable to the risk of being hurt. And for a while, it is convincing. For a while, it seems true. For a while, you might even believe that keeping your feelings hidden is an act of wisdom, of self-preservation. But over time, the avoidance begins to shape who you are. You may not notice it at first. You continue to show up in your life, continue to meet responsibilities, continue to function. You may even perform well. But inside, there is a quiet depletion, a slow erosion of your capacity to feel fully. You start to confuse protection with strength, believing that being closed off from emotion is a mark of resilience. You begin to measure your worth by how little you reveal, by how well you can suppress discomfort. And in doing so, you inadvertently sacrifice connection, the deep, soul-satisfying connection that comes from being seen, really seen by yourself and by others. There is an intimacy and vulnerability that cannot be replicated by anything else. It is the intimacy of saying, this is me, in all my uncertainty, in all my fear, in all my imperfection. And I am still worthy of love, still worthy of presence. When you avoid that, you miss more than you realize. You miss the laughter that comes from shared honesty, the relief that comes from speaking a truth you have carried alone, the courage that comes from exposing a wound and discovering that it does not make you less. It makes you human. You miss the beauty of connection that arises when another person meets your vulnerability with empathy, when they lean in rather than turn away. Avoidance is seductive because it promises safety. It promises that if you keep your emotions tucked away, if you control what others see, you will be protected from pain. But it is a false promise. The more you avoid, the more you disconnect from others and most importantly from yourself. You may think you are hiding from the world, but you are also hiding from your own inner life. You are hiding from the truth that your feelings matter, that your experiences are valid, that your story deserves to be told. And in that hiding, there is a loss, subtle but profound. You lose access to your own courage, to your own capacity for empathy, to your own sense of aliveness. You become a witness to life rather than a participant, a spectator rather than a creator. The challenge is not to eliminate fear, because fear is inevitable. The challenge is to acknowledge it and move forward anyway. It is to recognize that vulnerability is not weakness. It is the doorway to resilience. It is the willingness to feel, even when the outcome is uncertain, even when you cannot control what others will think or say. It is the courage to let your authentic self exist in the presence of others, even if it trembles, even if it stumbles, even if it is met with silence or discomfort. One of the most powerful realizations is that you are not alone in this struggle. Everyone experiences the tension between safety and exposure, between avoidance and courage. Everyone wrestles with the fear of being seen for who they truly are. Recognizing this universality can be a source of comfort. It reminds you that your fear is human, not shameful, that your desire for protection is natural, not a flaw. And in that recognition, you can begin to shift, not through force or judgment, but through gentle awareness and deliberate choice. Awareness is the first step. Begin by noticing the moments when you retreat, when you close off, when you say, I'm fine, instead of revealing what you are actually feeling. Pay attention to the small acts of avoidance that have become habits. This is not about criticizing yourself or creating guilt. It is about observing with curiosity and compassion. Awareness is the light that illuminates the patterns that have kept you disconnected, the key that opens the door to change. Once you notice, you can choose differently. You can choose a small act of vulnerability, one that feels safe enough to take yet meaningful enough to matter. It could be sharing a feeling with a friend you trust, admitting uncertainty in a conversation, allowing yourself to cry in private, or simply acknowledging your own fear out loud. These acts, small as they may seem, are powerful because they counteract the habit of hiding. Each one is a reclaiming of presence, a reminder that you are alive and that your emotions deserve attention. Reflect on the idea that disconnection may feel safe, but it is not neutral. It changes the way you experience life. It changes your relationships. It changes the way you relate to yourself. By confronting the quiet cost of avoidance, you begin to reclaim what was lost: the sense of intimacy, the courage to feel deeply, the ability to connect authentically with others and with yourself. You begin to remember that being seen, being felt, and being understood are not luxuries. They are necessities of a meaningful life. The work of vulnerability is ongoing. It is not a one-time decision or a single moment of bravery. It is a practice, a series of small choices made every day. Some days the choices will be easy, other days they will be nearly impossible. But each act of courage, no matter how small, compounds over time. Each act strengthens your ability to remain open, to stay present, to live fully despite the uncertainty, the risk, and the fear. Ultimately, the quiet cost of avoiding vulnerability is the cost of a life half lived. You may function, you may survive, you may even achieve success, but without vulnerability, the richness of life, the texture of real connection, the depth of emotional experience, the thrill of authenticity remains just out of reach. By choosing to step into vulnerability, even when it feels uncomfortable, you reclaim that richness. You choose aliveness over avoidance. You choose courage over comfort. You choose to feel even when it hurts because you understand that feeling is the gateway to growth, to empathy, to intimacy, and to a life that truly matters. So pause for a moment and ask yourself, where have I been avoiding my own heart? Where have I chosen safety over honesty? And how might I, in small and deliberate ways, begin to reclaim my courage today? Each step, each act, each acknowledgement brings you closer to the life you were meant to live. Not numb, not hidden, not distant, but fully awake, fully present, fully human. Courage is rarely a dramatic gesture. It rarely arrives with applause or recognition. Most often it begins quietly, almost imperceptibly, in the small decisions we make each day. It begins when we choose to stay present even though we are afraid. It begins when we resist the urge to shrink back, to close off, to retreat into the comfort of what is known, safe, and predictable. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the choice to act despite it. It is the quiet whisper inside you that says, I will not let fear dictate how I live. I will not let my pain define me. For many, the inner struggle that courage confronts is subtle yet relentless. It is the fear of exposure, the fear of rejection, the fear that being fully oneself might be too much for others or even for oneself. It is the tension between what is safe and what is meaningful, between comfort and growth. You may feel the pull to avoid, to turn away, to settle into what is predictable and manageable. It is easier, after all, to move through life without stirring the deep, uncomfortable currents that lie beneath the surface. Yet every time we choose avoidance over action, every time we choose numbness over risk, we pay a price. A life half-lived may appear functional, successful even, but it is missing the heartbeat of authenticity, the spark of connection, the thrill of being truly present. Courage is the bridge between who we are and who we want to become. It is the willingness to face discomfort head-on, to embrace the unknown, to acknowledge our fears without allowing them to control us. It is the act of leaning into life when every instinct is to step back, the act of opening your heart when every impulse is to close it. And it is not easy. It is exhausting at times, confusing at others, and often deeply uncomfortable. But it is also transformative. It is the moment you realize that your fear, while real, is not a barrier. It is a teacher, a signpost, a guide pointing you toward growth. Choosing courage over comfort requires a shift in perspective. You begin to see that what feels safe is not always sustaining, and what feels uncomfortable is not always harmful. You begin to notice the ways you have been shrinking to fit into expectations, hiding your full self in order to avoid conflict, judgment, or disappointment. You recognize the habits of avoidance that have become second nature, the polite nods when you wanted to speak, the smiles that conceal frustration, the silent retreats when your heart longs to be heard. And in that recognition, something begins to shift. You see that courage is not a single heroic act, but a series of small, intentional choices made every day. The practice of courage is built on presence. It begins with noticing your fear, acknowledging it without judgment, and moving forward anyway. It is about staying with discomfort long enough to discover what lies on the other side. It is about speaking the truth, even when it trembles in your mouth, reaching out even when you are unsure of the response, showing up even when the outcome is uncertain. Courage is not always visible to the world. Often, it is internal, intimate, quiet. A private affirmation that you will not allow fear to define you. A silent promise to yourself that you will continue to engage with life fully, even when it is painful or risky. There is also a profound realization that courage is contagious. The more you choose to act, despite fear, the more you inspire those around you to do the same. Each small act of bravery, each moment you allow yourself to be seen, each moment you embrace discomfort instead of fleeing from it, sends a ripple into the world. It tells others silently but unmistakably that vulnerability is not weakness, that risk is not danger, that being fully alive is worth the struggle. And in that ripple, you find not only your own strength, but the reminder that human connection thrives on authenticity. Courage opens the door to empathy, to trust, to intimacy, because it shows others that they too are allowed to be human, allowed to feel, allowed to risk. Courage also teaches patience. It reminds us that transformation does not happen overnight. It reminds us that growth requires persistence, consistency, and self-compassion. You may stumble, you may retreat, you may feel fear anew each day, but each return to courage strengthens the foundation on which your life is built. It is not about never feeling fear. It is about never allowing fear to decide your path. Each small act of bravery becomes a thread in the tapestry of resilience, weaving together moments of honesty, vulnerability, and presence into a life that feels more alive, more authentic, more whole. Practically, choosing courage begins with small intentional steps. It begins with noticing one area of life where fear has kept you from acting. Perhaps it is a conversation you have avoided, an emotion you have hidden, a dream you have postponed. Then take one deliberate action, small, measurable, and meaningful, that brings you closer to engaging with that fear. Speak a truth, express a feeling, take a risk that aligns with your values. Notice the trembling, the doubt, the uncertainty, and move forward anyway. With each act, your capacity for courage grows. It becomes less a struggle and more a habit, a natural extension of who you are becoming. Finally, courage is about choice. Each day presents opportunities to choose between comfort and authenticity, between avoidance and engagement, between fear and presence. Courage is the decision to engage with life fully, even when it is uncomfortable, even when it is uncertain, even when it is painful. It is the realization that what feels risky today may be the very thing that leads to freedom, fulfillment, and a deeper sense of self tomorrow. It is the quiet acknowledgement that a life lived cautiously may be safe, but it is a life only half lived. And in that acknowledgement, in that decision, the door opens to transformation. The kind of transformation that is slow, gentle, and ultimately enduring, because it is built on the foundation of your own authenticity, integrity, and presence. In choosing courage, you reclaim your agency. You remind yourself that fear is not your master and avoidance is not your destiny. You step into your life fully, intentionally, and unapologetically. You embrace the discomfort because you understand that it is the doorway to connection, growth, and meaningful experience. You learn that courage is not a destination, but a practice, an ongoing commitment to showing up, to staying present, and to living in a way that is true to your heart. And in that practice, in the quiet, deliberate choices you make every day, you discover that life is richer, fuller, and more profoundly beautiful than it could ever be from a place of hiding. Relearning how to feel again is one of the most courageous acts a person can undertake. It is not simply about experiencing happiness or joy. It is about opening yourself to the full spectrum of life, to the raw, messy, complicated, and sometimes painful emotions that make you human. After a long period of disconnection, it may feel foreign, almost uncomfortable, to let yourself feel anything deeply. Emotions that were once familiar may seem distant, muted, or even threatening. The heart has a way of protecting itself by shutting down. And when it has done so for long enough, reconnecting feels like learning a new language, awkward, slow, and uncertain. This process begins with acknowledgement. You cannot relearn what you do not recognize. You start by noticing the spaces where disconnection has taken root. Perhaps you have been going through the motions in your relationships, speaking without truly listening, laughing without truly enjoying, performing without truly engaging. Maybe you feel a dull ache of emptiness in moments when you know there should be more presence, more curiosity, more feeling. These are the signals of the heart asking to be remembered. They are quiet nudges telling you that the numbness is not permanent, that reconnection is possible, and that your capacity to feel has not been lost. It has merely been covered by habits of avoidance and self-protection. The inner struggle during this phase is profound. There is fear, yes, the fear of opening old wounds, of stirring emotions that may feel overwhelming, of discovering that what you have avoided is more complicated or painful than you imagined. There is also doubt in your own ability to handle intense emotions, doubt in the stability of the connections you have neglected, doubt in whether you even deserve to feel fully again. And intertwined with these fears is a subtle resistance, the temptation to retreat into what is familiar, into the safety of disconnection, even when you know deep down that it comes at the cost of your vitality. Relearning how to feel is not about plunging yourself into chaos. It is not about forcing yourself to experience emotions you are not ready for. It is about practicing presence, gently and intentionally. It is about giving yourself permission to notice, to name, to sit with what arises. You might start with something small, a moment of gratitude, a recognition of longing, a conscious awareness of a fleeting feeling of joy or sadness. The smallest act of acknowledgement can have a profound impact because it reminds your mind and your body that emotions are not enemies, they are guides. They signal what matters, what is unresolved, and what is alive within you. There's also an element of patience in this work. Reconnecting with your emotional self cannot be rushed. You cannot demand that the heart immediately feel deeply or consistently. The process is uneven. Some days may feel light, joyful, and full. Other days may feel heavy, confusing, and overwhelming. And that is perfectly normal. Healing, after all, is not linear. By allowing yourself to experience the ebb and flow of your feelings without judgment, you are learning the first crucial lesson of emotional presence, that all feelings are valid, that none of them define you, and that all of them carry information about your inner world that deserves attention. Relearning how to feel also requires courage in the face of uncertainty. You may discover emotions you have long avoided: grief, sadness, anger, loneliness, longing. You may realize that some of the relationships you relied on for comfort are no longer aligned with who you are becoming. You may confront the choices you made to avoid discomfort, the compromises that dulled your emotional life. These realizations can be difficult, even painful, but they are not reasons to retreat. They are invitations to growth. Each emotion you acknowledge is a step toward reclaiming yourself. Each moment of presence, a brick in the foundation of a life lived fully, authentically, and courageously. Another crucial part of this process is self-compassion. Relearning to feel is not a sign of weakness or failure. It is a sign of strength. You are allowing yourself to reconnect with your humanity, to honor your inner world, and to embrace the truth of your experience. You are choosing presence over avoidance, authenticity over numbness, and engagement over detachment. This requires gentleness. It requires patience. It requires understanding that the very act of feeling again, no matter how messy, confusing, or imperfect, is itself a profound act of bravery. Practically, this work can begin with simple, deliberate actions. You might journal your emotions each day, even if only for a few minutes, acknowledging what you feel without attempting to fix or analyze it. You might engage in mindfulness or meditation practices, observing your thoughts and sensations as they arise and pass without judgment. You might take a small risk in a relationship, expressing something honestly or showing up with genuine presence, even if it feels uncomfortable. You might practice tuning into your body, noticing tension, relaxation, or subtle emotional shifts that previously went unrecognized. These small steps accumulate, forming a practice of emotional literacy and self-awareness that strengthens over time. One of the most profound realizations in relearning how to feel is that emotions are not obstacles to overcome. They are signals, teachers, and allies. They provide insight into what we value, what we need, and what we have neglected. They help us navigate relationships, decisions, and life itself with more clarity and authenticity. When you allow yourself to feel, you do not lose control, you gain understanding, you do not become overwhelmed. You become more attuned to the rhythms of life and the depth of your own inner landscape. You discover that emotional presence is not a burden. It is the pathway to freedom, connection, and fulfillment. Finally, relearning how to feel requires commitment to practice, patience, and resilience. You may falter, you may resist, you may retreat at times, but each return to awareness, each conscious engagement with your emotions strengthens your capacity for presence. It builds the foundation for courage, connection, and growth. It reminds you that life is not meant to be endured in muted shades, but experienced fully in all its colors, textures, and complexities. And in that commitment, in the willingness to feel once again, you reclaim a part of yourself that has long been waiting, your vitality, your authenticity, and your capacity for deep, meaningful engagement with the world and the people you love. Growth begins when we stop running from ourselves and start showing up fully, even when it feels uncomfortable, even when it feels risky. It begins when we decide that life will not pass us by in quiet numbness. When we realize that the cost of hiding from our emotions is far greater than the fear we feel in stepping into them. Growth is not a sudden transformation, a moment of instant clarity or dramatic revelation. It is the accumulation of small, deliberate choices over time, the consistent decision to be present, to be honest, and to be willing to feel, even when the world seems uncertain or unforgiving. The inner struggle at this stage is subtle, but persistent. It is the lingering fear that all the effort to feel, to reconnect, to be courageous may be wasted. It is the doubt that your relationships will survive this honesty, that your own heart is capable of sustaining such openness, that the world is ready to meet you with empathy rather than judgment. It is the hesitation that creeps in when you think, maybe numbness was safer. Maybe I should retreat. Maybe I am not ready. These doubts are real and they are persistent, but they are not permanent. Growth is about learning to act despite them, to move forward even when the path is unclear, and to trust that each step matters, even if the destination is not yet visible. Being present in your own life is a radical act. It is the refusal to allow routine, habit, or fear to dictate how you feel, how you respond, or how you connect with others. It is the commitment to meet your own experiences with attention and compassion, to engage fully in the moments that truly matter, and to resist the temptation to check out or withdraw. Presence is the foundation of growth because it allows you to see yourself clearly, to recognize your patterns, and to respond intentionally rather than react automatically. It transforms life from a series of automatic motions into a meaningful, connected journey. One of the most challenging aspects of growth is the willingness to confront discomfort directly. Emotional presence requires sitting with feelings that are messy, confusing, or painful. It requires noticing the tension in your body, the unease in your mind, and the ache in your heart, and allowing it all to exist without immediate judgment or avoidance. This is not easy. It can feel vulnerable, unsettling, and even frightening at times. But each moment of acceptance, each act of deliberate presence strengthens your ability to navigate life fully. It is through discomfort that resilience is built, and it is through engagement that transformation occurs. Growth is also about reclaiming your sense of agency. It is about understanding that your emotional life is yours to steward, not something to suppress, hide, or outsource to others. When you choose to be present with your feelings, you choose to honor yourself. You choose to recognize that your experiences, your struggles, and your triumphs all matter. You choose to be the author of your own story rather than a passive observer of circumstances. This reclaiming of agency is empowering because it reminds you that while you cannot control everything that happens to you, you can control how you respond, how you feel, and how you engage with the world. The act of growth is deeply connected to connection. When you are present in your own life, you are better able to be present with others. You can listen deeply, respond with empathy, and engage authentically because you have practiced. Doing the same for yourself. Growth is not merely personal, it is relational. It strengthens bonds, deepens intimacy, and fosters trust. It teaches that vulnerability and courage are not only about your own transformation, they ripple outward, influencing and inspiring those around you. In this way, growth is both internal and communal, affecting your own life and the lives of those you touch. Another essential aspect of growth is the understanding that mistakes, failures, and setbacks are not signs of inadequacy. They are opportunities for learning, reflection, and expansion. Emotional presence allows you to witness your experiences honestly, to see where you have fallen short without judgment, and to identify the lessons hidden within each challenge. It allows you to approach life with curiosity rather than defensiveness, with humility rather than shame, and with persistence rather than retreat. Each setback becomes a teacher, each misstep a guide, and each moment of reflection a stepping stone toward a more authentic, resilient self. Practically, growth through emotional presence can begin with intentional daily practices. You might start by noticing one moment each day where you feel the urge to withdraw and choosing instead to stay engaged. You might reflect on your emotional responses at the end of each day, considering what they reveal about your needs, values, and boundaries. You might reach out in a relationship, express appreciation, apologize, or offer honesty in a way you have avoided in the past. You might simply sit in silence with your own emotions, observing without judgment and allowing yourself to feel fully. Each act, no matter how small, reinforces your capacity for presence and growth. Growth is also a reminder that life is not a problem to be solved, but an experience to be embraced. It is not about perfection, control, or constant happiness. It is about the willingness to engage fully, to embrace uncertainty, and to allow your humanity to be. When you cultivate presence, you develop a richer, more nuanced understanding of yourself and others. You learn to navigate life with integrity, empathy, and courage. You discover that growth is not about avoiding discomfort. It is about leaning into it with awareness, intention, and resilience. Ultimately, growth is the culmination of all the steps that precede it: awareness, vulnerability, courage, and change. It is the point at which all of your conscious choices, your acts of bravery, your willingness to feel, and your commitment to presence converge into a life that is authentic, meaningful, and deeply satisfying. It is the recognition that the quiet moments of engagement, the small decisions to stay open, and the deliberate acts of courage are what give life its depth, richness, and beauty. Growth is not a destination, it is a practice, a daily commitment, and a way of living that honors your emotional life and your capacity to connect fully with the world around you. In choosing growth, you reclaim your life from the inertia of avoidance. You remind yourself that your emotions, your presence, and your actions matter. You step into your days with intention, authenticity, and courage. You engage with your relationships, your work, and your own heart in ways that are meaningful and transformative. You accept that fear, doubt, and discomfort will always be part of the journey, but you refuse to allow them to dictate the course of your life. And in this practice, in this daily commitment to presence and courage, you discover that the life you are capable of living is not only possible, it is waiting for you, rich with connection, purpose, and profound fulfillment. Growth is the ultimate act of reclaiming yourself. It is the recognition that you are not defined by disconnection, fear, or avoidance. It is the decision to be fully present, fully engaged, and fully alive. It is the quiet, powerful understanding that life is meant to be felt, embraced, and lived courageously. And in this commitment, in this willingness to show up every day, you find the freedom, the joy, and the depth that make your existence truly meaningful